Committee of Economic Development to order. We are assuming that Mr. DiNardo won't be here yet. I guess he had his baby yesterday.
He had the baby yesterday.
All right, that's awesome.
Yep.
So we want to send the congratulations out to the DiNardos on their new baby, which is always exciting.
Unfortunately, Mr. Gabbard, I do not know the name, but do you know 8 pounds, 14 ounces?
It's a good size baby.
Big baby.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's so exciting for the family. So
Yeah, it's very exciting.
appreciate you recognizing me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to hear that. And hopefully everything went well and is going well with that. And so tonight, the only item that we have on our agenda tonight is murals. And would you all like to speak first? I mean, if you've got anything that you would like to bring, or
Sure.
yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
I wrote out a little letter that I'd like to read to you.
Sure. Let's hold 1 second. Steve, since it doesn't look like Eric's going to be here, do you want to put that mic over here? Where is? Do you have the actual stand?
No, I have to flip it to that table.
Okay.
Someone left some materials up here.
It's probably from the Planning Commission was here earlier today.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your indulgence. Thank you for allowing me to read off of a page. I think it's just more concise this way to make sure I hit all the points that I wanted to.
Sure.
So I wanted to just kind of lay out my understanding of the legal status of murals right now in Norwood. I understand that it's being enforced as part of the sign code as a quote painted sign, and that murals are not eligible for a variance, as the BZA is expressly forbidden from issuing a variance, and that's the ordinance. In the previous meeting of this committee, the assistant law director gave comments about not being able to regulate content, and therefore said, I cannot urge council to change sign code to allow murals. And I think Mr. Thompson summarized, not as his own perspective, but as the city's historical position on this. Quote, excuse me, we don't want to be okay with what people put up as a mural, so we won't allow murals. And Mr. Bonsall gave some further context around the adoption of the current sign code, saying that it was never contemplated that the sign code would be applied to murals. I have to conclude that the rights of Norwood citizens to decorate or beautify their own property was at some point taken away, that it was taken away by mistake, and that it was taken away without citizen involvement. Reasonable people at Lydia's house, like Mr. Hoff, have rightly assumed that murals are within our capabilities, and those reasonable people have been repeatedly torn down. And so I want to thank you all very much for having the willpower to take on this issue, to make things right, and to affirm the rights of the residents to adorn and beautify our own property. So I'd like to take you on a thought experiment. We're going to hop in the Magic School Bus. As many of you know, we recently had my building on Hopkins painted, to the great relief of my neighbors who have watched that property degrade over many years. Oh yes, okay, that's great. If you look way up high, we've chosen to illuminate some architectural detail on the dormer windows. It's a sunburst design. It's white with a yellow background. A literal reading of the current sign code would prohibit this in the same way that Mr. Hoff's sunflowers are prohibited. The sign code does not have exclusions for the painting of architectural detail. However, a reasonable person would never believe that my sunbursts are signs. And maybe they're not murals either, but taking things a bit further, another architectural detail that I particularly love about these old masonry buildings are the header courses. Every so many courses up the wall, you'll see a row of bricks turned inward. These courses add strength to the wall. And maybe that's an architectural feature I want to illuminate with some white trim paint. So now I have a dozen or so horizontal white lines up the side of my building. Or maybe I want to use a few different colors instead of just white. And maybe I want to have different background colors in between those stripes. Now I do think that a wall covered in half a dozen blocks of color would read to a reasonable person as a mural. But the questions then become, which stroke of the paintbrush turned it from architectural detail into a mural? How many colors am I allowed to use before I cross that line? Who is the person who gets to decide the answers to these questions? Should this really be the job of a municipal government to police these issues? And if so, what compelling public interest does that serve? Now, in terms of boiling this down into an ordinance, please, let's make sure that no one is obscuring sightlines, impeding pedestrian travel, preventing egress from structures, and charging a reasonable fee so that an official can certify those facts is hopefully not too restrictive. But let us not think too hard about this. We are the last ones at the table here. Cincinnati has phenomenal, nationally recognized murals and the absolute simplest set of ordinances you could imagine governing that activity. There is no shame at all in taking a good idea whole cloth and running with it. And there's no reason that Norwood residents should have to live in the most art-restrictive neighborhood in the region. Well, we started a petition, really a letter of support, on Friday night, and have so far gathered almost 500 signatures. The majority of those are from Norwood residents. You know how these things spread online. We would like to boil that down for you and deliver that to council as a list of certified Norwood residents, but I don't have those in front of me. And we'd like to periodically update the committee on those signature counts. So thank you again, and I personally look forward very much to helping us all carry this issue over the finish line. Thank you.
This is C or...
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't read. Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, come on in.
All right. I'm not as much of a public speaker as my husband, but I'll do my best. I've got a written thing too. I've lived in Norwood for 14 years now and love so many things about this place. Our family has a rhythm of walking together pretty much every day. I love that we can happen upon friends and friendly neighbors on these strolls. I love that we can get by foot to the library, a park, a pizza place, tennis courts, a pool, and a gym. I love hearing the stories my neighbors on Weir tell of walking to the ice cream parlor on Hopkins when they were kids, of the many neighbors who are like family to them, and of the street block parties they enjoyed. Norwood is truly an amazing place and has plenty of exciting potential for growth. We have ample raw materials to become a thriving, culture-rich, diversity-loving, walkable urban city. But we need to collectively decide that we want this and legislate in ways that make it possible. As long as Norwood strives to look more like a suburb regulated by a homeowners association, we will both fail to be a homogeneous suburb because we weren't designed that way, and we'll never reach our potential as a thriving city. So it seems self-evident that murals can be a catalyst for culture, diversity, and walkability. I just wanted to quickly cover some other benefits of murals. On a practical level, murals can be a tool for creative and cost-effective renovation. They can help integrate the sometimes awkward architectural juxtapositions or make the contrast feel intentional and compelling. Murals encourage pedestrian travel and therefore increase safety of the neighborhood. Studies point to murals discouraging graffiti. Numerous urban planning studies point to the role public art plays in economic development. And all forms of quality art help us express ourselves, know each other, and shape a collective identity. So, the question is, what is the compelling reason government should ban or limit the location of murals? The two reasons that the American Bar Association highlights as legitimate reasons to limit freedom of expression via art are traffic safety and, to a lesser debatable extent, protecting a unified city aesthetic. So the first one, Norwood has incredibly diverse architecture. We see situations like this all the time where divergent architecture styles coexist at the same time. For example, we pass on a section of Williams every day where there is a multi-unit, mid-century modern apartment complex next to a Germanic castle, single-family dwelling, next to a two-family that's kind of Spanish architecture, but it's covered by like a kind of a forest of bamboo, so it's hard to totally tell. Norwood has Swiss chalets, and it is well within the history and tradition of Swiss chalets to include both murals and ornamental painting. Norwood has traditional Spanish architecture. Spanish architecture has a long history of painted facades. So if the owner of a historic Spanish building wanted to paint ornament and figures on the facade of his building, much like beloved buildings in Barcelona, why would the government prohibit that owner from doing that? Let's see. So if we're okay with Swiss chalets and traditional Spanish architectural adornment, why would we not also be okay if a neighbor wanted to paint, say, a bird on the side of their building, or add a stylish exterior wallpaper, or help a concrete retaining wall that feels a bit industrial become a bit more personal with a mural, a nature-inspired mural? So regarding the second thing that the American Bar Association talks about, traffic safety, there's evidence that murals increase safety. Most accidents happen as a result of the driver being elsewhere mentally, lost in thoughts, texting, etc. Because murals are sometimes unexpected, they have been shown to bring drivers back into their physical surroundings and slow them down. Also, murals are incredibly diverse visually. Some murals are the equivalent of a shout, with bold lines and bright colors, and other murals are whispers, perhaps a soothing rhythm of light, delicate lines, something more atmospheric rather than attention-grabbing. So it's in everyone's best interest that murals in our community are high quality, setting appropriate works of art. I know that legal has said that government cannot be the judge of this and has recommended either banning murals altogether, as we have for the last 3 years, or legislating their size and location to prevent content and aesthetics deemed inappropriate. I guess my idea is, what if instead of over-restricting art, the government required each prospective mural to undergo a critique by a commission of diverse artists and art professionals? Obviously, suggestions given to the artist and property owner by this group could not be binding, but it could be a step toward greater refinement of an idea and quality of outcome for the community, building owner, and artist alike. Plus, in the unlikely event someone wants to put something inflammatory on their building, there could be community mitigation and conversation to dissuade the execution of the idea. I guess I want to end with what is at stake. So Sam mentioned that we started a petition to help you all feel empowered to move forward on this issue. And we were kind of perplexed when we saw overly zealous family members and friends from different places sign. We were like, no, don't do this. But I'm glad a few people did, because it was telling. My friend Kate Hanissian, who used to live in Norwood, shared this. I'm a resident of Cincinnati and former resident of Norwood, Spencer Avenue. While I loved so many aspects of Norwood, things like this are the reason we left. After a lot of careful contemplation we decided that we did not want to raise our kids in a community that shied away from diversity of thought, race, opinion, and background. Murals are a fantastic way to improve and brighten communities, and our family strongly supports this petition. So, nobody likes to see that, but I think it gives appropriate gravity to all these discussions. Thank you so much for all your hard work to make Norwood a place that welcomes diversity of thought, race, opinion, and background, specifically as we consider murals. And thank you for working to pass ordinances that encourage a culture-rich, diversity-loving, walkable urban city.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else like to speak? For, against, either? Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Yvonne Collins. I live on South Madison Avenue, and I didn't expect to hear such wonderful speakers speaking on the murals. As a resident who lives on the corner of South Madison Avenue and Duck Creek, we have a retaining wall. And I watched that wall for 25 years. And I am feeling you. And I will do whatever I can to support you and help you. And I know the city of Norwood will be there also. And one day you'll drive down Duck Creek and you'll say, Yvonne got with them. And you ride down that wall. It's about half a mile down Duck Creek. And you'll say it's pretty awesome. So thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like to speak?
I didn't like prepare anything, but
That's okay. I mean, yeah, you just,
say a few things.
yeah, you can either have prepared statements or share from the heart. Either one.
I'm Meg Albers. I live at 1810 Hopkins, which is one door down from the Hatchett's property. When my neighbors and I found out what their plans were, we had concerns. I'm an artist myself, and I've actually been commissioned to do a mural in another city in Cincinnati. So I'm not against murals. I just feel like there's a place for them. And I think me and my neighbors feel that it's not appropriate on an all residential street. Like, I just also wanted to point out, like, we had just found out about this a month ago. And we tried to, start a petition to get signatures. And I feel, the Hatchetts and the people who have been pro-mural, they've had, they've been preparing for this and wanting this for over 2 years. So I don't feel, their petition accurately represents, all the citizens in Norwood, because a lot of people don't even know about it. Like I myself, I didn't even know anything was going on. I didn't know about the sunshine list or any of that. And if it weren't for my neighbors going over there and asking what was going on, I would have had no idea. I'm concerned with the fact that you can't control content. I just think it's opening Pandora's box. And it's been really frustrating because I feel like my voice isn't being heard. That's all I can think about right now.
Okay. Well, thank you, Meg.
Thank you.
We appreciate that. Pastor Sonny James.
Last but not least.
Well, Pastor Sonny James at 1830 Hopkins Avenue, 3 houses and a crosswalk east of one of the suggested areas. Like Yvonne, though, I mean, I applaud any positive act that can bring a greater sense of rich culture and diversity to our community. Norwood has made great changes in the last 20 years. You just go to Kroger parking lot, and you can see that Norwood today is not Norwood 20 years ago. And so with that diversity, though, comes many additional challenges. And so one of the things that I try to make sure we think about is not always putting the cart before the horse. So I am for murals. I am for diversity. I am for a public display of beautiful art and artistry, and giving artists an opportunity to display their God-given talent. And I'm certainly not an artist, so I applaud every one of them. At the same time, because of what we see sparking around the country, people are looking for many opportunities to express themselves, or like one resident said, not feeling heard. And so we have to be careful when we begin approving or making a general approval, because then some other mindsets might say, because they weren't privy to a meeting or they weren't aware of the petitions, then they might say, oh, I want to draw a flower on my house. But me and my friends, our flowers don't look like yours. Our flowers, they say something else. And so now we put ourselves in a position where we now have to police art. And I don't think as a city we're prepared to do so. So my suggestion would be, whatever you decide to do, first and foremost, murals that need to go up, especially right now, should have international flavor, but they should also represent what we as a people are overcoming. And we have tons of civil rights icons that have gone on that we could paint and give a reminder of how far we've come as a people and as a nation. When you look at the Capitol, not far from where our president travels, the entire block has been printed Black Lives Matter. Even in Cincinnati, not far from City Hall, there are beautiful murals that have gone up to represent what we as a people are developing and coming through. And so I think when we set out to do this type of work, it should first represent and give people of all races something to say, wow, look where we've come from. And I think that is very important. Now that wall on South Madison, that is definitely an eyesore. What a wonderful place that would be to have some type of cultural representation. Now I do know in my neighborhood where I am, traffic sometimes does get heavy. Cars don't always stop at that stop sign. And so we just have to be careful. I do support art, and I do support the expression of art. I just think we have to give more thought to where more folks are brought to the table before we make decisions, so that we get more of a collective appeal. And then when we do decide, set parameters set locations that are appropriate or not, and then include the community. Have a wall or have a presence and invite the community to say, this is where our community does art, and make it a fun spot so that it distracts anybody from thinking of doing something on their own way, that probably will cause more of a negative impact than positive. So you guys, I applaud you for make decisions always, and then we have to come back and go, shucks, we should have thought of that, or why didn't we think of that? You guys are competent and capable. We've got great residents, great citizens, caring citizens, and so it's important that we work together. As Yvonne said, definitely going to support, especially if they put something on that wall over there. But I just want to say we've got a tough one in front of us, folks. It is a tough call because you've got to look at what could come out of it, and I think without including the community at large and bringing a project to the table that the community can embrace as well, I think we open up Pandora's box. So God bless you. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Pastor. Let me start by saying I've kind of gotten somehow a reputation or been labeled that I'm anti-mural, and that's not the case at all. I'm the one that put murals in this committee because I think murals are beautiful, and it's a topic that we need to explore and look into to see how, if and how, we can make them work here in Norwood. So I'm all about that. Matter of fact, I want to take it even further and it just be art in general. I would love to see us have some creative art throughout our city, statues, other features of art, whether they're water features or just sculptures or whatever, just art. We have virtually none of that. I think I can only think of two, and I'm probably overlooking, and both of those are from the Lenders. One is at Waterworks entrance, and one is at Lender Park. It's the only two statues that I can think of, unless you consider.
The thing in front of Walgreens, the
Walgreens thing. Yeah, but yeah, we have very, very few pieces of art in Norwood. Norwood has, unfortunately, been labeled as an anti-art city, which that breaks my heart. I mean, that should not be the case. I'm very thankful for Councilman Thompson, who we kind of challenged to come up with a draft that we could at least start with and look at and see where we need to tweak and go from there. And so he has done just that. And so we have that with us tonight that we wanted to kind of go through. Before we start through that, let me just check with our law director and see, Mr. Moore, if you've got anything that you want to add, say, whatever. Is it on? He'll get you on. He'll just keep it there. He'll turn it on. Check, test.
He's asleep.
There you
Oh,
go.
there you go. Okay. Thanks, Steve. And I just want to say this: the sign code that we have now is essentially is a reaction to what we had 15 years ago. And the idea is there should be some limits on what signage people can put up. You can't put. We don't want billboards at the corner of Hopkins and Carter. We don't want anybody to be able to put up, we're going to have Geico signs or 1-800-call-this-lawyer signs all over somebody's yard. Or painted on the side of their house, 1-800-mesothelioma. I mean, that kind of thing, you don't necessarily, there should be limits on where signage is allowed. And then what you run up against, though, is the U.S. Supreme Court basically saying you cannot regulate content. At the same time, they say the SEC can tell companies what they have to and can't put in their annual statements. But when it comes to signs, you can't regulate content. You can regulate time, place, and manner. And while there's a difference between commercial speech and non-commercial speech, that's not always how it plays out when it comes to sign codes. For example, you can, under the U.S. Constitution, the First Amendment, you can lie in a political campaign. That's constitutional. But you can't lie in your advertising. So it's one of those things. It's finding that line. And so what this version of the sign code did was we're going to go pretty much straight time, place, and manner. You can say where somebody can talk and how loud they can be or how bright they can be, how big a sign can be compared to the frontage, and that's kind of what we have now. And at the time that discussion was going on, and it started, that original draft of the sign code was like 12 years ago maybe, and it was passed a few years ago. There was nobody was saying, I want a mural. So it wasn't something that was considered. But that's really kind of the issue we have. So the idea of we're going to have somebody sign off on what a mural looks like can't happen. Any more than the city can approve the content of whatever billboard ad is going up this month. Cannot happen. Now you can have a review if you're doing public art, which is what Artworks does. It's people volunteer. It's public art. They do the process. If you have public art, like the wall down on Duck Creek, I'm pretty sure ODOT owns that, so it would be up to ODOT to do whatever they wanted to do. But that would be public art, and that you can go through a process. What does the city want to paint over here on this surface that the city owns? That's a different process. And then you can do the community input on the rest. But that's kind of where we are. So that if we allow murals, we really have no say over what the content's going to be. And somebody can put up something that, I might think is really cool, and Mike is going to be appalled by, and vice versa. Or I might have thought was really cool when I was 19, and today I would be totally appalled by. So there's really not a good way to balance that kind of thing. There's no way to be able to judge that ahead of time. So the real question is, if we're going to allow something beyond what we have as signs, what's in the sign code, something bigger, which is pretty much a mural, is just a much bigger piece. That's not one square foot for every linear square foot of the frontage or whatever it's in the code right now. The question is, how big do you want it to be, or do you allow it to be? Do you a whole wall? Where? And are there may be some other conditions, like what parts of town, what kinds of buildings. There's a few kinds of parameters we can lay out, but beyond that, as far as content, what's actually in the picture, what it's a picture of, we really don't have the authority to do.
Great, thank you. Let me also say that I have sat down with the Hackett's, I've sat down with Miss Albers and others over there in regarding this. And this is a very passionate thing. It's a hot topic. We've actually had several people joke with me, the fact that I'm the chair of this committee and that's what we're talking about, and they'll joke about, oh, you want murals, woo. And it should be. It should be. It's a very serious topic, because art is so subjective, and that's part of the unfortunate parts. But I am glad that we are talking about it. I find it interesting when I looked up a definition of murals, it had to be on a wall. So apparently, like the basketball courts that are being painted at Waterworks, that's a mural. If I've ever seen a mural, that's a mural. But it's because it's on the ground. The definition that I read said it had to be on a wall or a ceiling, which that made no sense. I mean, why can't it be on the ground? So, with that said, let's go through this. Eric, would you like to just kind of go through it, and then as we go through, we can make notes. and have discussion about any type of tweaks.
Sure.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yeah. So actually, I don't think that I was actually included on this email that had a copy of this. I think it might have just been sent to me.
Yeah, I only sent it to you.
So,
Oh.
Eric, if you
I am-
forward it to me via email real quick.
I don't have internet access here.
Are there any copies?
Jay, do you want a hard copy?
Can you just make some
You
copies?
guys want hard
Yeah.
copies of this?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, if you could.
It's the same thing. Is that the same thing you sent to me, Eric?
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
I didn't want to send to the whole group.
well, yeah, because the open
First.
source stuff, I agree. Oh, yeah, that's fine.
You just didn't want me to know.
I know.
Give him just a moment to, well, if you want to start, actually, I mean, because it's
I
pretty
mean, we just-
basic.
I know the challenge was to sort of first draft an ordinance. Ordinance speak is a very special skill that I don't have, so what I did was sort of phrase this in the
Oh, yeah.
form of slightly more organized.
And let me just real
train of
quick,
thought.
just so everybody and people that are watching know how the process works. We are not voting on murals tonight. That's not something that a committee does. We are, Mr. Thompson was gracious enough to take some time to come up with kind of a draft. And so we're going to look at that draft and see how that works and tweak it, add, subtract things that we want, and then that would get sent to the law department. And the law department would then put it in the formal, talk language that would need to be in there, and then it would go to council, at which point there would be a vote. So tonight that's not what this is about. This is the committees are kind of an informal way to have discussion on things, and then bring that to council. Okay.
Do you want me to go, or do you want me to wait for Keith?
You can just start.
Okay.
Because it won't take him just a few minutes.
So, kind of started off with just general considerations for ordinances. As we think about where they go, we want to make sure that their places. I've got it digitally. You want to make sure they're in places that experience high levels of pedestrian traffic and be part of the city's circulation patterns. It's about opening up the city and allowing, giving people reasons to move from place to place. You want to be easily visible and accessible to the public. You want to anchor the site and activate the site where the mural exists. It becomes a place when you put a mural in, so that's the kind of thing you want to have happen there. You want to enhance the overall public environment and the pedestrian streetscape, not detract from it. You want to help to create a place of congregation and activity. These are all just basic reasons why you have murals. You don't want it to obscure windows or entranceways or disrupt anything about pedestrian circulation or traffic for that matter. Murals should not consist of any advertising for any business or product. It should have no more than, I said, just a round number of 5% of their surface covered with text. What that is it just limits, if UDF wanted to put a mural on side of their building, you didn't want them to put their name really big on it. It's still a mural. It still needs to be a piece of art. It could be ice cream, but you wouldn't want it to become a billboard.
Right.
So that's a way to limit that kind of thing from happening just by putting a percentage of the overall surface area that can be covered with text. Just pointing out that based on the things that Mr. Moore said, City of Norwood does not hold final approval over the artistic outcomes of the project, including but not limited to the designs, color palettes, artists chosen. It's because it's free speech protected. We don't get to tell people what they can or can't do on a mural. The next thing I wanted to touch on was just the areas where we could potentially put murals within the city. So one of the things that I wanted us to really consider were all the little corner markets that we have all around the city. I know that they typically are in more residential areas, but they are on corners of streets and thoroughfares. And they're a way of enhancing, as we said, or as I said in that easy early area, what is it, like serve to anchor and activate sites, to be visible, to experience, where am I can't find where I found it.
Number one.
Yeah, like help to create places of congregation and activity. So they become anchors in areas, and it's, so I wanted to put out there that I think those markets and those corner stores could be good places for murals because they can become focal points within neighborhoods. We've of course got industrial areas, warehouses, businesses, the main thoroughfares and arteries throughout the city. And I just added on the retaining walls. So I hadn't thought about that, but that's a potential blank canvas for these kinds of things. I didn't go into any great detail. I'm not an expert on zoning code and the different kind of zoning areas, so I decided I tried to describe it in layman's terms.
Which is great.
And,
that makes it.
And we could talk about if those were the areas that we wanted. When it comes to construction and maintenance of the murals, they should incorporate high-quality materials and enhance the overall appearance of the site and not adversely affect safe and efficient movement of vehicles and pedestrians. Materials may include paint or other media appropriate for exterior use, such as tile or mosaic. There's a real beautiful mural downtown Cincinnati. It's a portrait. They did it with, they plastered the side of the building, then chipped away at the plaster. And where the texture goes, it becomes the shadow. And so there's actually no paint. It's just all texture. It's beautiful. It's a real famous, world-renowned artist who did it. Materials need to be long-lasting, graffiti-resistant where possible. The idea is that mural size is generally determined by the surface where they're being applied. Occasionally you'll see murals where they define a space where they want a mural, but generally it covers the wall. So that's what I intended by that. Most of the time you've only got one mural allowed per structure. Same thing in Cincinnati. You shouldn't, another thing about murals is it shouldn't obscure or detract from significant architectural features of a building or structure. And you shouldn't actually adjust your structure to allow for the mural. Right. So if you've got a 10-foot wall and you want a 20-foot tall mural, don't build your wall, you know. And don't hide the aesthetic of the building. You usually find them on blank walls, few entrances or windows. That contrasts with the idea of painting to enhance architecture, which I think is different than murals. But I wanted to recognize that you brought that up because that's important too. You don't want it to, if it's a historic property, you don't want to damage the historic properties. If the mural requires lighting or any kind of special things like that, of course you have to get your permits for all that sort of thing. Any kind of routine maintenance on the artwork should be the responsibility of the building owner where the mural exists. So if a mural degrades over time or is damaged or something, we want them to be upkept, and that becomes the responsibility of the building's owner. Just additional thoughts that really weren't covered in anything else is establishing a sort of permit structure. We'll want to do the associated fee, we're going to want to make sure that it's on a place that has the right kind of zoning, that it's on the right kind of wall, that it isn't disrupting any kind of traffic patterns or pedestrian patterns. I mean, something that still has to be looked into to approve the permit. And as a result, should probably have a fee associated with it. Cincinnati charges $120 for that. And I wanted to point out that overall, the big thing that we're doing here is I think we're defining murals as being a different kind of entity than a sign. So signs are those kinds of things that Mr. Moore were talking about, where the advertising happens and where there's communication, that kind of thing. A mural is a different thing from a sign, and I think that's important that we somehow establish within this. I also wanted to echo the suggestion. I think potentially having a non-binding review board to look at the art, to make recommendations about the art. Hey, let's see what you got. How's it going to look on the building? Oh, well, did you think about how that looks when compared to the thing that's next to it? Okay, no. Well, if you change it this way, it could work better. That kind of thing. You can't be binding. We can't control what they do. But it's a kind of an open critique and improvement. It allows for the art to even get better. And I think it, as was mentioned, it can apply positive peer pressure. If somebody really wanted to spend the money that it would take to craft a mural that was offensive in some way, and bring it in front of a committee that was going to sit there and critique it and ask them if they realize these things, there's the potential there for positive reinforcement and maybe to have people change minds. That's sort of the long bullet point read explanation of the thoughts that I had. Happy to answer any questions or if it makes you think of anything, add to it, subtract. But that's what we got.
Thank you so very much. I really do appreciate you taking the time to put that together. And I'm glad that you did do in layman's terms, so we can kind of better understand and be able to work our thoughts through it. Mr. Bonzo, do you have anything?
Yeah, I do. Thank you so much. I just want to thank Mr. Thompson as well for his work on this. I'm sorry that we put this all on you when it comes to at least putting some of this in writing, but I do appreciate the work you did there. I did also I'll comment on this, but first I just want to go back. One of the, it's been kind of suggested that, and I know that not everybody has known about this, that this has been worked on, but I mean, we're now in almost 2 years that we've been talking about murals on council floor, and we had a proposal last time that the last council sent to the planning commission, and the planning commission essentially ignored it, and which was unfortunate. But I think we have a different planning commission this time, and I think that if we need their support, which I don't even know if we do actually, but if we did need their support, then I think that we're going to be in a better spot. Actually, before we go further, Mr. Moore, would you comment on whether the planning commission has to approve this?
I honestly thought they did because the last one came from the planning commission, and that's who had been reviewing it for over a long period of time. That's who had put the thing together, and so. But no, it's not a part of the zoning code, so no, it doesn't have to go to the planning commission.
Chapter 13, so it isn't part of the zoning code.
So just a point of clarification with that. So what we would be doing is more or less changing the building code, the sign code or whatever. We would be changing or making a new section to differentiate between sign and mural, and that's what we're doing here, right?
Well, it would make, I don't know, we could do a whole separate chapter, I think. But I think we could do it in a whole separate way. The hard part is when somebody doesn't get a mural they want, or somebody doesn't get a sign they want, and they challenge it because we let murals do it, but the sign can't. If it ends up in court, we want to. My biggest concern is we make sure that whatever is wrong, whatever the court says this is not valid, it needs to be thrown out. That it's the mural part and not the no billboards on Forest part.
Yeah.
So that's one of the hard parts, because one of the problems you have with a sign code, and there will be something in it, like you can't have you can only allow you can have political signs and real estate signs in your yards, but that's it. You can't do that. If you're going to allow signs in yards, people's yards, they can put up any kind of sign they want. And so a billboard company would come and challenge it and get the sign code thrown out in that community, and then there would be no sign code, and they'd put up a billboard. in between the time when the court threw it out and when the legislature, the village, or the city could pass a new one that was constitutionally valid. And that's the big concern. Whatever it is that, if something gets found invalid, we want to have the bulk of it remain. So whether that's a part of the sign code or whether it's a separate thing and we just define, we amend the sign code to make sure that the mural is not considered one of those, is not subject to that, something that's a whole wall for artistic purposes with no commercial message, kind of whatever that is. That we just need to make sure that there's, we have a good severance clause, is what it's called.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so that's helpful to know, and I appreciate that. So I guess going back to this, it's been worked on for 2 years. I think there is a lot of agreement just on the council in general that we do need to find a way to move forward to allow murals. So I'm glad that we're talking about this. And I think at some point we need to just define and I think that's what we're doing today, but I think we just need to define the criteria that we want in the ordinance and put it up for a vote. And if we want to amend it on council floor, or we want to vote it down and then amend it later, I think that's fine. But I just want to make sure that I don't want to keep going through with 2, 3, 4 more meetings, right? To try to keep working on this. And let it turn into another chronic nuisance ordinance, which is fine. We're making good progress there. But I really want to I would love to get this defined tonight and really get this to a vote on council floor, over 3 meetings where we can have, public input and such, at some point in the somewhat near future. So it was mentioned about Kate Hannison, she used to live on Spencer. I actually met her, I guess, 4.5 years ago, the first time I was campaigning, her and her husband. They invited me to their house. I mean, they're just wonderful people. And then 2 years later, when I was campaigning again, I met them again, and they were telling me about how they're going to sell their house because they really want a place that kind of embraces diversity and a little bit more than they felt like that Norwood did. And, it made me really sad inside because I love those people, and even though I think they just moved up to Pleasant Ridge, or they're very close by, but it made me sad to know that they didn't see the community as fitting for them and for the family that they are raising. So when she brought that up, I can attest that that's exactly why they moved. That's exactly why they told me they were moving before. They had a beautiful house, on a nice street, but they were looking for something more. So it definitely. Second thing. It was mentioned about the mural review board. Yeah. Okay. So it was mentioned about the mural advisory board or mural review board, and I just want to say that I do support that. I think that's a great idea to kind of, again, make sure that there's some transparency in the community with what's being proposed, but then allow artists to have a conversation with each other, which is tough for artists. I mean, for everything I've ever heard from artists, and it's tough for me having somebody review my work. It's not something I necessarily willingly want to go do, but when I do have somebody review my work, not that I'm an artist necessarily, but whatever I'm doing, my work usually comes out better because I've gotten people challenging or asking questions and such. And so I think this mural review board, as much as it could be uncomfortable for the artists, I think overall they're going to appreciate it. I think that the community will appreciate it, knowing that there is some transparency about what could be coming down the road there. I did appreciate the comments from the public about the various housing in Norwood, and I've known that, but it was really interesting to point out the different types of housing that we have and how literally you can have it.
So, is your microphone on?
Yeah, okay, fine. Can
We can't hear it all.
You just turn them up for the inside, Steve.
You got to lean way in.
Maybe that's, is that any better or no? Not any better? Yeah, it looks like we're going to work on getting the mic up. Yeah, we do have it slated in our capital improvement plan to revamp this AC thing in like 2023, so it will be better at some point. The wood will probably be here for the next 50 years, but hopefully the AC system will be improved. Okay, so I'll kind of go back a little bit. Essentially, just, you know, so again, this has been worked on for the last 2 years. I agree with the mural review board, and I think that's going to be a overall lead to a better art, and I think it's going to lead to transparency so that neighbors know, and when there's, or that it's known that something's coming, and when there is something that could be controversial, exactly like I said, you know, potentially there can be some negotiation and some dialogue that can happen there. You know, I also, Mr. Sonny James talked about the, you know, being worried that the bird that one person paints, you know, and that we all like may not be the same as the bird that somebody else paints, and I do think that's why we're trying to get away from any content regulations. We don't want people to think, Mr. James, that your bird is not good enough, you know, where somebody else's bird might be. So just want to say that that's being addressed. And overall, like I said, I just think that we also just have to be careful to just avoid, you know, we can kind of get into this mindset of always looking at what is the worst thing that could happen, almost like this NIMBY, not in my backyard kind of attitude, like, you know, not here, this is going to be bad, but then appreciating, you know, murals elsewhere. And I do think that I do kind of worry about that, because if everybody said, not in my backyard, then we'd never have anything anywhere. And frankly, I would love a mural to be, there's a place, if there was an apartment building across the street from me, or if there was a place specific, and there could be, I just don't, not thinking of it, like right next to my house, I would love to see a mural there. So I did want to ask, so anyways, long story short is, I just hope we can move forward tonight with making sure that we, you know, kind of going through this criteria. I'd like to see an ordinance on council floor sooner rather than later, because again, for me, it's been 2 years. I know for you, Mr. Gabbard, you had 8 years off, you know, but for me, it's been 2 really long years when it comes to murals, and I definitely really want to start seeing, I want to at least, let's get this on council floor and get a vote, so I'm looking forward to us getting to work. Thank you.
Just a couple notes that I made. I like the review board idea. So let's talk about that for just a moment. How would we go about setting that up? Who would appoint? Is that something that we would need to have in this ordinance? Is that how, you know, who that board is and how it's set up and who appoints and all that? Do we need to have all that in the ordinance, or is that something that we can address after the initial ordinance is, you know, passed or failed?
I to be honest with you, I have a real problem with the review board, even if its decision doesn't mean anything other than it's like, we're going to hold you up for public comment before you go ahead and do this, because we don't have it for signs, any other signs. We don't have it for buildings. I mean, where Fun Factory was, somebody, if it meets the building code, they can put something up now, and nobody gets to say, oh, we got to run that past the neighbors and see if they think that's okay. And that's a building. You can't just paint over it. You know what I mean? So I have some serious concerns about that. I don't know if you can do that, and I think that there, you know, if you're going to talk about, we're going to add 30 days on top of the permit process, because it should be a pretty simple permit, that you don't add to every other permit that you give out. You know, it's not in a PUD, it doesn't need a variance, it doesn't need a conditional use permit, it's not a zone change, it's nothing like that. And so the idea of having that, I personally, I really I think that there's some real problems with that.
So, go ahead.
And to be honest, the other side of it, it's my wall. I want to put up a picture. Why do I have to tell everybody else what I'm going to put up and see what they think about it first?
Well, I mean, right now, but right now, like, we're basically saying that you can't do anything with that wall except paint it a single color. I mean, that's essentially what we're saying right now. So I feel like we're being creating more freedom here.
You can put up 27, I think it's 27 square feet of any message you want.
You can paint any message
you can put up a sign, you can put up any kind of message or picture you want, 27 square feet. That's what the sign code, I think that's what the sign code allows, something like that, total. But I'm just saying, it's like that's my concern.
So this is
you
why
know?
I think that my opinion, I think it needs to be completely separate from the sign code. Like, it cannot be in the same thing as the sign code. It needs to be its own chapter. And I think the chapter should be about public art, and then there should be a section about, so the public art, there should be this public art commission or public art review committee, whatever. It's not just about murals. It's about statues, it's about whatever that we don't allow right now that we want to start allowing. And I feel like we could probably, like, we talk about all these things that, like, we could get sued, we could get sued, we could get sued. Well, I mean, the government's passed stuff all the time where they might, maybe, potentially one day get sued, and they never do get sued. And so I just don't want to worry so much about this that we don't pass something that's good, just because we're afraid that potentially it could be whatever, pushed back against. So I just would like to look at it further, because I personally want to see this as like some kind of an art board that is completely advisory only, they can't stop it, but they can at least give feedback and try to, again, make this something that's better. But, I mean, specifically right now, though, they would only be tasked, I would think, with murals. I mean, unless we really want to try to expand the conversation, but I'm thinking at this point, let's just get the murals done and potentially go back and look at other public art. But I'm going to, of course, I'll defer that.
Right.
Okay, just to be clear, what they want to do is not public art. They want to put a mural on their building. That's private art. That's not public art. Public art is owned by the public. So if we want to put a statue in front of City Hall, that's public art. If we want to put a statue at some of the islands over there on Williams, that's public art. It's paid for by the public. It's maintained by the public. It's on public property. That's public art. That's a different thing altogether.
I appreciate that distinction, because I should probably use that too loosely. Thank you.
So with that, we could develop a public art review committee that would, that way, regardless of who the mayor is, they couldn't just say, hey, I'm going to have the city commission a statue of me and put it up. It would have to go through a committee, that would, to do that. Now, what we could do with this as it pertains to murals is we could, even though we can't say you have to get their approval, it would be when you come to get your permit, it's highly advised, and we strongly recommend that you go and take your painting, whatever it is, to this board as strictly for them to look it over and give you feedback on it. And what that board would do is they would look at not necessarily the content, but like as you addressed in here earlier, how does that fit with the architecture? Maybe somebody doesn't realize that in the ordinance it says, because the board would have the ordinance. Maybe that person just thought, well, hey, I want to paint this up, and they paint over some historic architecture that shouldn't be painted over, like you addressed in here earlier. So then they would say, hey, your painting, would look nice here, but it can't go there, and it can't extend into this area because of those features or historic, or something like that. That's what I'm saying. So we could make it where we strongly encourage you to go. If they don't, and then they come back and they're, then the building code or whoever would go out and say, hey, that violates this ordinance. So what they're saying, what we would be saying is, we would highly advise you to go to this board and let them take a look, make sure that you're going to be in compliance of everything. It's got nothing to do with your content, but just to make sure that you're going to be in compliance with everything. Would something like that be okay?
I think that would be fine. Send it to, we have a body that we'd like to, we recommend that you go talk to them before you come here, and that way you'll avoid any, you could avoid any issues. Just like somebody says, hey, I want to do this. I say, call Mark, he'll tell you what you need to do in order to get through that.
Or, it could be more of a sign, and we'd say, hey, you can't have that much text in that. They would be able to say, according to the way the ordinance is written, just they could help.
Well, just to get into some of the covering up the architectural detail, the historic, I'm not sure how we define that. I get that that's a pretty standard kind of thing. The hard part's how to define it, especially in Norwood where everything's 100 years old. Pretty much,
Everything's
my house is not historic, but it was, built before Ford opened his factory, so it's old. But things like when it comes to it won't obscure the architectural features, the building structure, the windows, whatever that is. That's going to be a question for the building commissioner on whether to issue the permit. Bottom line, that's where it comes. It's just like you can't be, it's got to be, you got to set back at 10 feet. it can't be more than 20 feet tall. It's just like, oh, no, sorry, you're over that. We're going to have to kick this back. So there's some wiggle room in there, but that's the building commissioner deals with those kinds of issues is a swing set of structure. They deal with that kind of thing every day. So, but those kinds of standards are just like, that's the kind of thing that's the building commissioner would make that call as to whether the issue the permit or not.
My thinking more along the lines as I thought about this before tonight was almost if you thought of them more as an advisory group.
Yeah.
Where they're not there to approve anything or disapprove anything. It's people who are knowledgeable about art and murals and say, that might not hold up. It might look better if you tried this. But in the end, it's always in my mind been, in the end, you're the artist, but if you came to us and asked us for our opinion and we gave you some, it's that kind of thing.
So the building commissioner, when they go get their permit and they submit their drawing, would look at it and say, this is not big enough or it's too big. Would the building commissioner also approve the materials just like they would a deck?
Just like they would a
say,
sign.
hey, you can't use this particular type of paint on that outdoor thing. It's just not, this time next year it's not going to be there.
It depends on what the parameters are that we put in. I mean, because the sign code, for example, says you can use this kind of facing on it, and you can use this kind of lighting in it, and you can use, but you can't use this material, and if it can't project more than so many, if it's a canopy or I didn't forget what the terminology for some are. It projects more than this many feet out from the front of the building. That's no good. So yeah, they go through. That's exactly what they would do. It would depend on whatever technical provisions you want to put in there, if you want to put any in.
Thoughts?
I mean, other than we could, I guess, put something like should
I would have
last.
no clue on the difference between, the paint that I would paint the inside of my house and
for
the
me,
outside.
I don't know if you leave that up to the building department in the review process of.
Would that be something that if somebody's spending this kind of exorbitant money to put a mural up, they're gonna know that what type of
Hopefully
materials
they would be willing to look into it,
Right.
but you can't always assume.
Well, the advisory board could also, and maybe that's what we
inform
call it,
that.
an advisory board instead of the development of an advisory board.
I think there's language we could put in there that says it's going to be durable kinds of materials that are going to
The
last.
building department can then define that. Like, they can
Yeah.
determine whether what they're proposing uses durable materials or not.
Okay.
So did we land on? Are we still thinking? I mean, because what we had was two different proposals. One proposal was that we would require that mural applicants go in front of, once they submit their application, submit their design, they go in front of this advisory board, and they can literally just ignore the advisory board completely while the advisory board talks about it, or they can engage. It's their choice. But they go in front of the advisory board, and after that they can get their permit. 15 days, 30 days, whatever it is, from when they apply. Or the proposal that Mr. Gabbard suggested was that we strongly suggest you do that, but we won't stop you if you don't do that. Did we land on what you?
No, that's what we're trying to figure out. I mean,
Well, the other question is a practical matter, is like who's going to be on it, who appoints who's going to be on that, how often are they going to sit? I mean, if it's a group of just volunteers and they may be able to meet once a month, they may not, their schedules may not work, they may be able to pull something together in a week or two, they may not. And so, I mean, that's just one of those practical kinds of things you want to work through. On, if you're going to have a board that is going to do this and who's going to be in charge of sending out notices or whatever else needs to happen in regards to that, that's one of those things. It's just the mechanics of that is hard. I mean, sometimes it's hard to get the planning commission or the building, the zoning board together on, at every single monthly meeting or on a short notice, or even council committees.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. I for sure. I'm not discounting that. I just think if we have to decide what we want this board to do, then I think we can talk about potential, how it's structured. Does the mayor appoint council approve, 3-year term? It sounds like kind of a 3-member board. You really wouldn't need much more. As long as 2 of the 3 members are there, it kind of serves its purpose, I feel like. So, Go ahead, Mr. Thomas, what were you gonna say?
That's if you want to treat it as a board that meets. Or you treat it as, these are the advisors who have been appointed to this thing. Shoot them an email with your
Hey, can you meet
art
Friday?
on it
Yeah.
and get feedback from them. I mean,
Yeah,
it could,
yeah, you could even do it
it
like
could
that.
be as light, board light as that, I think.
Yeah.
It's just, I thought it was a good thing to include when it was suggested, because it's a little bit of a check step in the creative process, which, being somebody who does this for a living, doesn't always hurt.
Right, and I think that's very different than James sent me a text, the idea being, we're gonna have a public meeting, invite the people that are interested, which sounded like you're gonna, like, send notice to everybody within 300 feet.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, but that kind of thing, we want public input on the design. So, I mean, that's just, it's a very different kind
For
of.
me, it's not that.
I think you misunderstood what I was saying. What I was saying is that by nature of, because I was suggesting to Mr. Moore earlier that potentially we just say, you know what, they just stop by the next council meeting after their application and just let us know, show us what they're going to do. We have no approval thing, but at least then it's transparent. The community knows kind of what's going on. It was more of a transparency aspect, but then that doesn't accomplish what I think the artist advisory board does, which is actually puts people that know what they're talking about, on the board so that they can have that communication. And that's kind of what I worry about the email thing. If we're going to go down that route at all, potentially we don't, but if we're going to go down that route at all, I like the idea of it being a board that we appoint people to, because and being someplace that meets, because then again there's more transparency, just kind of the community kind of knows what's going on versus, hey, just send this guy an email and they just get their feedback on it. I mean, I guess it could work either way. I'm all about, I'd love just to be able to, like Ms. Albers or anybody on Hopkins, to have an opportunity to see the design and at least be able to engage with the artist, whether it be through they knocking on the door or what have you, just to at least know what's coming. But if we don't have that, I mean, it is what it is. It's just, trying to listen and trying to hear, and that's kind of why I suggested that originally.
Do we require notice? Like if there's any type of change, in the building structure, conformity, zoning change, there's a notice sent out. Do we need to do that?
I mean, I don't know if we need that. I mean, we could, especially if we're going to go down the path of just giving them a permit. They apply, they meet the size requirement, they meet the zoning code requirement. They're at. I mean, I guess we potentially could say, hey, look, you need to send to your abutting property owners just a letter with a picture of it or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I mean, I've never seen a mural ordinance that does that. So.
And I'm not anticipating that there being a ton of murals that suddenly would. So, if somebody goes in and they want to get their permit, then the building department maybe sends out a notice. This is going to be, the board will, can be called together for whenever they meet. Suggested a revised, advisory board, and they look at it. The building department's, looked at it, or the building department could be a part. One of their people that would say to the other, board members that, hey, this needs to be changed here, or this particular thing is not a part of the code, but.
Yeah, I mean, I would expect if there's any kind of, if it does not conform to the code, even I think if there's more than 5% text on it, let's just say that we're allowed to put that requirement in there, and we do, I don't know if we are, I would think the building department would just deny the permit, within hours of them receiving it. I mean, that's my opinion, is that I want them to stop that kind of stuff there, or at least advise people as they're submitting it.
I like that.
I don't want the board to have to review, is it in an R2 district, right? I mean, the building department, or is it?
Right, okay. So the advisory board would be 3 or 5? Or the artists?
3.
3?
Yeah.
And then, so they would be appointed by, who would we suggest? The mayor makes appointment?
It's literally an advisory board, so I think the mayor could probably just appoint, just like he would.
3 people that he knows that are, have artistic.
I'd like to have one appointment from council.
Okay. So, one,
So 2 from the mayor, 1 from council. Do you want them in staggered 3-year terms, or just all 3 years? all at once.
Do we want to have a different group do a third, or have the mayor do two and us do one, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with the mayor too, and that's one.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, so that's what the advisory board,
And did we just want them to do 3-year terms, or how many years did we talk about? 2 years, 3 years?
just say 2 years.
2 years, okay, and then they all serve concurrently, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes it easy.
So every 2 years, you know,
A lot of these people are
you either, re-up them or
Yeah.
get new people or whatever,
Yeah.
how that works. Okay. So that's good on that. So as far as the advisory committee, it would be, you would go get your permit, and then once the building department approves, more or less, saying that, hey, you meet all the requirements, you're within the boundaries of this, then they would then tell them that it's highly suggested, or
I mean, I was gonna say, I personally want to see it required. I think you probably sound like you kind of want to highly suggest. So I mean, Eric, what do you?
I'm not.
I'm not.
He's saying that we shouldn't require.
I mean, I hear you. I just think there's so much value in it that if we, like, literally the people that are going to not go
definitely
are the
see
people
value.
that are going to mostly need to, like, that we would want to go. Like, that's, at least that's just my opinion of it. So that's why I would say, like, require it, and then if it gets, I mean, we can always change it later if we had to.
Because it's not like they're, like I said, they can't really do anything. All they're going to do is give you advice.
Yeah, and it's just, I would expect that this group would schedule a meeting like the BZA once a month, and, as long as you get your thing in within 10 days, or whatever, however many days, then you're on their agenda, and
Okay.
it's just showing up and being there literally checks the box to get your permit.
I'm okay with that. Are you okay with that?
That's fine.
Okay. Okay, so, all right. The routine maintenance, who would it fall under the building department to, who makes that determination that that's now too faded?
Housing inspector, building inspector.
Building department, same with signs or houses or whatever else you got.
Okay.
I mean, it'd just be the same, it's gotta be maintained it's gotta be maintained. Same as pretty much anything else somebody puts up.
Okay. My only drawback is, and like I said, I put this in this committee, I want to see murals here. I want to make sure that we do this right and that we don't end up with issues. And so I would like to see us approve them for, to start, commercial and commercial and industrial, business area, all that. Not necessarily residential. Not to say that, in a year or so, we don't come back and say, hey, we've had X amount of murals go through the process. The process is working. We've not had any issues. Things are working well here. Let's go ahead and incorporate. Just as a stepping stone, that's just my recommendation, and that's just my thought and idea. I think most of the people that I've talked to that say they're against murals are against them in a residential thing. And that's why I would like to maybe garner their support by showing that we can make this work. This is what the process is. It's working. It's doing good. It's drawing attention. It's beautifying our city. It's doing all the things that we wanted to do. So now we want to, take it the next step further and incorporate residential. That's kind of where I'm at on this now.
What about neighborhood business districts?
That's technically, I mean, that's business, so.
Okay, I mean,
What did you say?
neighborhood business district.
Neighborhood
So
business district.
I definitely want to see, I mean, I think neighborhood business district, I think we have to include that like,
Yeah.
in this designation. Like, I think it's too important to not do that. I still want to see, I mean, I understand where you're coming from and I understand the concerns when it comes to that. I mean, I still would like to see the corner markets, the corner commercial buildings, even if they're in a residential zoning now. I personally would like to still see them be eligible if they have a commercial use or if they're either grandfathered in because they've had a commercial use for years, or if they fall under the conditional use of the corner store ordinance that we have that that's passed. I would like to see that. So even if that means that we have 2 ordinances that council considers, I'd at least like the chance to consider that.
Thoughts?
Yes. I like the idea of having those older corner markets involved again, because at some point, like I really believe that murals can activate areas and beautify areas, and I'm not just really interested in beautifying Montgomery Road. And Highland, it's. I hope that those do get beautified, but just little pops of color within the community, and just those kind of things. I think do a lot for community, and we aren't a suburban community here. We are rural, and rural. We are not rural. We are urban. And when you're in an urban community, there are businesses mixed in regularly with residential area, and those, I see that as being part of the community, not against the community. Mm-hmm. And so I want to recognize that, and I see that as an important part. I totally understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
So. Like Mr. Bonsall said, if it was 2 ordinances that we considered, one that included them or not. And again, I don't even know how you carve them out when you're talking about that legally,
right?
When it comes to zoning and all. But
would they be considered, what he's talking about, the little markets, would they be considered neighborhood business district?
Not always.
Not always?
Yeah,
Some are, some aren't. I mean, there's like one on every corner in Norwood. I mean, that used to be a store. So.
Specifically, and when they did the corner store ordinance, there was like 30 of them that they identified, or 35 that were in a residential district now that were historically commercial buildings. And the whole reason why they did it is because, again, our neighborhoods were built around these little corner stores or these shops, or you could have like little insurance agents. I mean, just all kinds of stuff that you could have at the bottom of these things. And that's how people used to get around. They used to walk to these different businesses, and they're trying to reactivate it. So, I still see them as being a part of this, and I'd like to see them included. And I mean, really, like I said, I'm hoping that this having the mural advisory committee or the art advisory committee, I forgot exactly what we're calling it. I'm hoping that could really honestly, like, we could get to a better place, because again, I mean, it is and if we do establish that, Mrs. Gary aptly reminded us that it has to be an open meeting. So it is something that has to be open to the public, it has to be advertised.
Right.
It's not something that can be behind closed doors. So the public is invited to see it, and we could even put in there that public comment shall be taken at that meeting too. So, and again, and they can ignore all of it. But I feel like, I mean, most time when people come to BZA for things, a lot of times they're not just looking to shove something down somebody's throat. Like if there's neighbors that are there to talk about it, many times property owners are willing to listen, and I know, and I'm sure the Hatchets are willing to listen as well when they get to the point to actually design their mural and at least incorporate some feedback. So that's why I think that honestly, I mean, it'd be great if we just had one ordinance that incorporated that. But if I'll defer to your leadership on this, with you pushing this forward. If it needs to be 2, then, I'm fine with that as well.
Well, on the BZA, people go to the BZA because what they want to do doesn't meet the building code, or doesn't meet the zoning code. So, but if I'm going to have a new deck put on the front of my house or a new front porch put on, and it meets the code, I'm not thinking I'm going to go to a board and ask for everybody's input on whether they like it.
No, but I mean, a lot of times you're true, I hear you, but a lot of times the board will say, Sandra Kelly is known for wanting fences to be a little bit off the sidewalk, right? So they'll say, will you be okay if we put this restriction on it, right? And not that they can necessarily do that with the content, but most people are like, yeah, that's fine, we can make that work, no big deal. And I can see the same thing kind of happening here. Not that there's like an actual restriction, but I can see it where, hey, look, have you considered, this set or whatever. I'm not an artist, so I don't know what artists talk about when it comes to that kind of stuff, but I can see there being some good dialogue there. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Okay. I do like not having more than like 5% of the rendering having text in it. I think that's important. Do we want to consider that they have to be so big to eliminate anybody just willy-nilly throwing something up and saying, oh, that's my mural, just here and there? Meaning that these are true works of art. They're,
Most
for
murals
lack of a better term,
cover the
grandiose.
full wall.
Yeah, and so that, so we would say that it would have to be so many square feet,
Square feet or percentage of the
or
wall.
the percentage of the wall. Like right now, the sign code says you can't, for a sign, it can't be more than, a foot per linear or something like that.
Right.
But we could say that it has to be, 50% of the wall, or at minimum. What would you guys think about something like that?
I'm fine with that. I'm not entirely certain off the top of my head what that number ought to be.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at like most murals, they're intended to cover the
Right.
full
Yeah.
wall. So there are times when
I just don't want.
what I'm
There-
thinking of is like there are times like depending on content, you could like let's say this is just an example. Let's say you had a 40-foot tall building that was 20 feet wide, and you wanted to paint a single dandelion up the whole thing.
Okay.
It might in reality only be covering 30%
Yeah.
of the available wall, but in truth, as a composition, it is the full thing. So I don't want to make it look like you have to splatter paint all over the entire surface.
Yeah.
But compositionally, it should encompass the entire wall.
Okay.
But I don't know how to say that right.
Sorry. I agree that in practice, but I think there are, I just looked up a picture of the murals, and I think there are definitely examples that don't cover the wall that I think are not bad murals. I mean, I would almost look at us trying to put a minimum footage on it, I think most artists are going to cover the wall, but I think there's specific examples that are not going to cover the whole wall. And some of them it depends on if you have like a progression of pictures or a progression of something, right? At least there's some like a history ones at one of the cities. I think Covington has one down with the flood wall where you have like pictures of Covington as kind of the city progressed. So maybe we can put a square footage, like 100 square feet or something, I don't know, whatever that's 10 by 10. So I just would be careful.
Which is that's still a pretty good size, and that's going to be
It's
like
only 10 by
costly.
10 feet.
That's
I'm
not
sorry?
a lot.
It's only 10 by 10 feet.
Yeah.
You can fit that right there.
Yeah.
That's,
Well, okay, so
that's not much of a mural.
Maybe you could say 200 square feet.
Yeah, maybe 200. I'm just saying, you want it.
You want it to be
Something.
substantial.
Yeah, it needs to be substantial.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Cleveland's got 80% of the wall surface.
Oh, they do. Okay.
Cleveland?
Cleveland's, yeah.
Well,
Wow.
So,
okay. I mean, if we want to go, I mean, I wouldn't really want to do more than 50% if we're going to
Yeah, that's
do
what I was
that.
going to say. I was thinking 50.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. Yeah, I'll defer to you all.
I was thinking 90, but that's okay.
Are you really?
Yeah.
The beauty is if we get one that's like 60%, we're like, oh, what the heck?
I will say I was in Cleveland 2 weeks ago, and with this topic being, on my mind, I specifically, as we were driving around, was looking for murals, and I had those that were with me. Hey, if you see one, point it out to me. If I just overlook it, because like the first day, it just wasn't on the front of my mind. I was busy with some other things, and I'm like, I don't see many murals, and everybody else was like, they're everywhere. What do you mean you didn't see them? So it's just because I was just being blinded. And so then I started really paying attention. So for the next 2 days, I started paying attention. One thing that I did like was like, I don't know if they're the phone company or the electric company or whatever like that. Those boxes that you'll see on a corner,
Yeah.
that they're big boxes. So like virtually all of those were painted with some sort of mural, some sort of painting was on them. So they didn't look like just a bright, shiny metal box on a corner. They actually had caricatures or, flowers, different things like that. I liked that. I thought that added something. Really, it took away from this just industrial looking thing. The retaining wall. I don't know how, if that's something that ODOT. Now that retaining wall did have a mural on it, and it was hideous, and it was on there for a lot of years, and it looked bad, really bad for a lot of years. It's only recently been covered up, and so that's not what we want. We don't want that kind of stuff. We want something that's going to look good, and then that it's well maintained. But
Those are
that's
instances.
a great wall. That maybe a history like the ones that's at Covington in front of like the Embassy Suites that actually faces the river. Those are great pictures, historical pictures. That would be a great location for something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Mr. Moore, this is a question for you, kind of. But so there's a thing called when they did the Black Lives Matter mural, because I thought as soon as they put that Black Lives Matter mural on the street in front of the city hall at Cincinnati, that literally like now you're gonna have to let the people that pro-life people put something in front of Planned Parenthood, right, Mount Auburn, whatever. And essentially what they did though with the Black Lives Matter mural is that they declared it government speech. They declared that this is the official speech of the city of Cincinnati, and because it was in a public space, and they said this is our speech. Our speech is Black Lives Matter, and they were able to, and they approved it 9-0 on council. When it comes to like public right-of-way stuff, like is that have you heard of this concept before, and are you familiar with it? If you haven't, we can talk about it later. But
Yeah, when the government speaks, it can say pretty much whatever it wants.
as long if we declare, so we could say like
We can say this is our policy. We are in favor of this and we are opposed to this, and government can do that, yes. Because we have the government, the city of Norwood has a point of view about certain issues. And we don't have to share like our webpage. We don't have to make, when we put out, when the city puts something, when the city puts a banner on front of the fire, on the front of the police station, or when the city puts something on its webpage, it doesn't have to allow equal space for everybody else, because it's us, it's the city of Norwood speaking.
so even in the
In a
concept
public
that
space,
even
it's gotta
though
be
that there were
our stuff.
artists that designed that, and other people paid for that art to actually be put down, it was declared government speech. So I guess the thing is, like, when it comes to that, places where we're on the city right away, or maybe we're on ODOT right away, or whatever, I think they're working by different rules. So like, if we want to do that, those boxes that are, we want to allow and I don't even know if the telephone companies here will allow it, or if some of them are traffic boxes, I think. So
Yeah.
Either way, like, those likely will operate under a different set of rules than what we necessarily are going to approve for murals. But I think and we need to figure that out. I think we need to figure out what is government speech, because I want to see murals down at Hopkins Park, right? And I want to know, and with that, we can approve the design on that, right? Like, if there's a mural in Hopkins Park that the government puts up, we can approve that design, right? We don't just commission an artist and say, put up whatever you want.
I don't know.
Where at?
Put it,
Like at the Hopkins, Lower
Millcrest?
Millcrest Park.
Lower
Excuse me.
Millcrest? Yeah.
Or oh my gosh, can't believe I said
Yeah.
that. Yeah, but Lower Millcrest Park, there's, on the side of the restroom building facing
Oh.
the the
Yeah,
shelter.
The shelter, okay.
Absolutely.
You know, it was commented, oh, look at this blank wall here.
Yeah.
So
That's because that's public
Exactly,
art at
yeah.
that
Yeah,
point. That's the art that
yeah.
the city owns.
So, and this same advisory board could actually,
we can empower them to.
we can empower them on public art, whether it be a mural or a statue or anything like that. They would then, advise on that. Yeah, this would be good for that, and then that's, that they do have a little bit of power, but for residential or private, I should just say private, not residential, for private murals, they're just advisory.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking along the advisory board, like an art advisory board. I was thinking the model is more like the tree board than as a
Yes.
review of murals. That this is, the tree board is a body that is there, and when they can get trees to plant, that's awesome, and they can do some other stuff. If the city's going to landscape something, well, ask them. If people are going to do land, we may run it past. People submit PUD
Yes.
landscape designs. Hey, send a copy over to the tree board and see what they think.
Yeah.
So that was my thinking as far as how to draft something like that, was to set it up as
Yeah.
an advisory board for like public art, for like, can we get a grant to do this kind of thing? Can we work with some of the groups in town to have little art displays or like more classes for kids and that kind of, that's what I was thinking was the idea, is the way I would actually try to draft something like that.
Yeah, I like that. One of the areas that I've also seen is, especially around the schools, is the painted crosswalks, where they're painted in design, and that would be, that would be a city project, whether we got grants or something like that, but that would be us doing that. The city would be saying, hey, we're going to paint these particular crosswalks and these particular patterns, whether it may, and maybe we put the elementary school logo, there, but it designates that, gives it a little bit more visibility to the, hey, there's something here, oh, that's a crosswalk, which I do like that idea as well. Was there's something else there. All right. Is there anything else on here that that we can think, and then what we can do is we can send it to the law department, have them formalize it, and see what how that looks. Yes.
I just have a question, if I may.
Sure.
And I'll put it in terms of a hypothetical. Do you want me up at the microphone, or is this okay?
Come up just so people can hopefully hear you.
So again, purely hypothetical. My back fence, right, in my yard. Say I want to decorate my fence, okay, with high quality paint. Want to enjoy it for a long time, it's for my private enjoyment. But you can see my back fence from the street. If you look up the driveway, you can see it. Are we saying that I am not free to do that currently or going into the future?
I think that you're allowed to do something like that. I don't know.
Off the top of my head, I don't know, and it's, if you were to paint the inside of your fence, I'd be surprised if anybody would be upset by it. It may overstep the bounds of the sign code, but off the top of my head, I don't know. But that gets back to, is a swing set of structure.
I remember that.
Yeah. Or if I want to paint a section of siding on my house for my private enjoyment, but you happen to be able to see it from public right of way.
Yeah, it's probably not allowed. I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm not saying that people are going to come in and tell you to tear it down, but it's probably not, right?
Probably not allowed on the structure
If you can-
itself.
yeah, I mean, if you can see
Is
it-
the fence structure, that's,
Probably not. It doesn't. I mean, the fact that it's not on the building, it's on something else, because a yard sign is a sign still, and it's clearly not a structure.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things that, I mean, like, legally, you're not allowed to put yard sale signs up on the phone poles, or my cat is lost signs up on the phone poles. That's illegal too.
Right.
So, it's. I'll tell you this: it's impossible to write common sense into a legal code.
No, I get that. Yeah. I'm a programmer. I know
Yeah.
it.
Okay. You get it. Yes.
Yeah, so it really gets to the question of, well, how do you disambiguate a sign from something that is not a sign in common parlance, and how do you give people the freedoms that they can enjoy on their private property?
Right. But
They're
at the
not-
same time, like a Nike swoosh is
Yeah.
just a design, but it's also clearly a sign.
There's no
It's a
text.
commercial message, so, you know.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's inferred.
Okay.
kind of thing.
Thank you. Very interesting.
Yeah, that's a great question, though.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any other questions, comments? Yes?
Can I just ask something? So, if we go in the direction of just having murals in commercial, and did you say industrial?
Industrial, yeah, those two areas. Just not the residential properties.
And then you thought maybe in a year you might reconsider. What would be the criteria for possibly expanding? Would it be like if the public approved of the murals that were put in?
Yeah, I
the
think it
commercial
would
area?
just be, yeah, it's just like you don't have per se a vote of how we vote. You elect people to vote. So it would be like, what kind of feedback are we getting? I would hope, I know I would be checking with the building department, I would check with this advisory committee. Have we had any issues at all? Are we having any problems? Has anybody tried to come and they say they want to put a Confederate flag up on the side of their building? Are we having issues at all? Or is this working? How is it working? Do our research like that to make sure, get public input as far as, hey, we love these particular ones that here, and here, they look great. People are making comments. Yeah, you're just going to have to get feedback like that and work it, and one of the council people bring it up and put it in the committee and say, hey, we want to revisit this now. And it seems to be working from all aspects that we've talked to, all the people that are involved in these things, even the people that put the murals up themselves. I would want to have conversation with them and just say, hey, what was your experience on this? Would you do something differently? Or what, could we do something? Should we make a change? Because there might be some that, hey, really, we shouldn't probably do it that way. You should probably look at it this way. And just try to engage, which is what we're supposed to be doing, is engaging and go from there. That's how I would perceive that it would work. These guys might have a different, idea, but.
Well, my thought is still, I still want to see them on those little corner
Yeah.
markets. So to me, that I realize that's residential. They're still business, and I would like to be able to see them. I don't have a lot of faith in that kind of process. I think not that the intent. I believe the intent is the right thing.
Yeah.
But I think if we waited a year to see how things were going, and one of us motioned to put it into this, and then it would go 6 more months, and just because once things don't come in, things just take time. I mean, they just do, and to see, for me personally, like, I've gotten dozens of communications and emails in support of these things. I don't know that you need to wait a year to see if people still support the idea,
Well,
and so to me, that's just right.
Well, just to play kind of devil's advocate on that, there's a lot, and every day I'm getting for and against, them, so it's like crazy. And to see how this has really been a spark, But to play devil's advocate on that, somebody might say, yeah, I'm for it, and then somebody puts a mural up that faces their house, and then they don't like that picture, and they're like, well, maybe it shouldn't be in residential. I don't know that I would want that, have to look at that every morning when I open my bedroom for lines. That's why I say that. I'm just trying to, and I mentioned this in an earlier meeting. I hate playing what if. But as council people, unfortunately, we have to play what if, because we're looking at how this affects the whole city. Yes?
Can I just speak to that?
Sure.
Just in our particular situation, in buying that building and wanting to have a studio for my business, because of the pandemic, we didn't get a chance to reach out to neighbors right away, and were able to see via the petition that they weren't in favor of murals. And actually, as we've thought through, okay, where is Norwood going to allow murals? There's 0% of me that wants to make a mural to make people mad. Like, if all of the neighbors facing that mural do not want a mural, I don't want to put one up. And I would love to talk to you outside of government mediation. I mean, I'm cool talking within government mediation, but
You know where I live.
yeah, I've knocked on your door and I just don't want to stalk you, but definitely feel free to talk to me. So I've actually thought, well, maybe since I know my neighbors are uncomfortable with this, maybe I would put a mural on our house instead, because I'm pretty sure our neighbors on Weir would be accepting. So if we're only considering murals in commercial districts or on business, corner store businesses, I guess I would just ask, what is the government reason to do that? Because in essence, you're giving free speech to businesses or corporations, but not individuals. Why are we doing that? Is there a good government reason to do that?
That's a great question. My only response, I guess, to that would be is it directly affects people's quality of life and their property values, their perception of that, I should say. Is perception always reality? No, but it's their reality, and that's the only reason I would say that is. And that's the only reason. I would hope that maybe we got to that point, and maybe that vote comes out that it's for across the board. I'm just saying, as a representative, I would just like to see that one step, just to make sure that we're doing it right, that we're in the right channel here, things are moving smooth, we're not having problems, and we also. What that does for me is it allows people to see the murals that start to go up and say, I do like that. I wasn't sure if I liked them before. I wasn't for it before, but now that I see what people are thinking, what the visions are, and gather their support to where people are now accepting of it, or the majority, I should say, are accepting of it. And that's kind of where I'm at. Personally, I think that, like I said, I want to put this in here. I would love to see murals around. I'm not always sure that we have the best of neighbors like you fortunately do. Some of us don't have the best of neighbors. I'm not saying I don't. But I'm just saying some people don't have the best neighbors that may want to push the envelope a little bit, and that's where hopefully the advisory board kind of helps with peer pressure and helps to address some of that, so we don't have that. That's the biggest concern that I hear from people, is they're just afraid that there's going to be a big bird, somebody paints a big bird on the side of the house, and I'm not talking about a bird that flies, I'm talking about one that's done with a gesture. And that's what people's concerns are. They're concerned of those moral, ethical, those kind of standards that somebody's going to push that envelope. Do I personally think that we're going to have issues with that? No. I don't think so. I hope not. But we have 19,000 plus people here. There's some that just, they have the money and you push their button and then suddenly they want to.
I think that's my microphone.
It is. Does that make sense at all? I'm sorry. That was a long answer, but and I'm just trying to come with what, we've talked, but just so public understands as well.
Let me just offer a brief reflection.
Sure.
Is that there are so many aspects of community life that affect both quality of life, property value, the perception of both. My neighbor could cut down an ancient, healthy tree that provides me shade, consulting 0 people, filing for 0 permits. They can smoke in their backyard. They can scream obscenities at their kid.
Yeah.
They can listen to music I don't approve of. Nobody has control over that. There are so many aspects that don't require this level of micromanagement.
Right. That's a very good point too. Totally an excellent point. Yes.
For me, I agree with what you're saying. I wonder for residential properties. I don't know. My thinking is maybe that's not a mural. Even if it's a mural that you're painting on your house, you're painting your house, or you're painting your back fence.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want. I don't want to derail the mural thing by trying to make it all encompassing. But I very much value what you're saying, and I agree with it. Is like we can do all kinds of things. I can plant whatever kind of flowers I want in my house and in front of my house, and whatever design and pattern I wish to do it. I could probably even spell something if I wanted to.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to tell me that I can't do that.
You're a better gardener than I am.
They would not let. It would be like for 2 weeks and then they're gone. But I totally understand what you're saying, and that it is your property, and you're not doing anything crazy or vulgar with it. It's just embellishment on the property. So I know what you're saying. I don't know that the mural conversation is quite the right place. To me, that's more of a residential. I don't even know what it is. Like the same way that the city will cite you if you don't have your railings painted properly. You know what I mean? It's like to me, it's part of that kind of code there.
Yeah, it's almost subjective. And you made a point before about painting the bricks that go a different direction, in an accent, which comes to mind. So when is it technically a mural? When is it just that's my paint job versus that's now a mural? I mean, and I don't know that you could define that.
I mean, I don't want to get too deep. I mean, I understand the question there. I do want to be try to get through as much of this as possible.
Yeah.
We could go down that rabbit hole and probably spend 15 minutes talking about elements of murals versus elements of paint detail. But no disrespect. I did just want to say that. I'm not ready to vote to say that we should allow murals on any structure in the city at this point. I mean, I'm not ready to support that personally, even though I understand the question. I know that I'm not there yet. I doubt the majority of council is quite there yet. I would love to see us go forward with the recommendations that Mr. Thompson had for now, because I think that that's closer. But I appreciate the philosophical question because it was thought-provoking, I will say, to think about that. So thank you.
So I will kind of type up, add the couple little things that we've added. I'll send it to you guys first. Yes, Mr. James.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, first of all, I'm glad that I was here tonight because it is so refreshing. I was at the Planning Commission meeting and was very disheartened. And then to see this committee addressing this same issue, and again, for the residents, no matter where this thing falls, it's very refreshing. We have the law director here answering questions, giving clarity, and back and forth. Each committee person is talking with each other back and forth, just throwing things out, and really showing, having a heart to hear from the public, and giving people an opportunity to come to the table. And I just personally say, someone who thinks the way I think, that's so important. And just keep that up, guys. I encourage you to do it every step of the way. The last thing I want to encourage, you had mentioned 2 appointments by the mayor and 1 by council. Again, I would encourage you to maybe talk a little bit more as a committee how that process happens, because, I mean, most of you know I'm always going to put a plug in for diversity. And so I think as you give the mayor that right or that responsibility, and council, that you set some parameters that we help shape the future of Norwood, and everything that we do, that we intentionally and deliberately attempt to eliminate some of the, like you said, the perception. And so when you all give somebody power, whether it's the mayor of the city or not, but we have to make a better effort of bringing everybody to the table, or at least giving everybody an opportunity to feel like they're welcome at the table. And I think all of you know that when I say from history, that hasn't always been the case. And so as you do that, please talk a little bit more about how do we make it more inclusive, and not just always hand-picked individuals that are already a part of the mindset or status quo, but open it up a little bit so that others can at least come to the table and be included. So we won't hear rumors of, well, you know, they try to ignore you, or they don't listen to you. They try to act like you're not there. Shouldn't be like that. It should be, if you're a resident here, you love this community, you love this process, you should be able to come and be included. So please make sure you include that. I don't know how you're going to do it right now, but please make that a part of your protocol.
Okay. Thank you. So I will, I'll kind of type up what we've got so far. I'll send it to you guys just to make sure that I didn't forget anything or leave anything out, and then we'll send it to the law department, and then I'll ask that there'll be two versions, one that is just across the board and one that just does commercial and residential, and we'll go from there. Any other?
And when you say residential, you mean the corner store kind of commercial uses in a residential district. I think that's what we talked about, right?
What's that?
When you say residential, you mean the corner store type stores, right? Because I don't think any of us are prepared to vote on something that says literally in any structure in the city.
Yeah, that's what.
Okay.
Yeah, go. If you're classified residential, or how the zoning is listed.
Well, I mean.
So like neighborhood business would be okay.
So I think Mike, I think what he means, the one alternative is just commercial and industrial, and the second alternative would be commercial, industrial, neighborhood business district, and whatever the corner store thing, whatever that language is.
Neighborhood business district though was in all alternatives. Like
what?
Neighborhood business district is included in all alternatives.
Well,
so.
this is why I'm going to do a draft.
I just want to make sure
you guys are going to make a whole bunch of changes, then I'm going to do another draft, and I'm going to have to make some more changes.
I don't want us to have to though. I mean, again, I'd like.
I'm telling you, that's what's going to happen.
Okay. Well, I think so. I think what it is, I mean, it's neighborhood business district, general business district, manufacturing office. Like that's one. That's the Mr. Gabbard. Like that's the version that Mr. Gabbard kind of proposed. The other version includes grandfathered commercial uses in a residential district and conditional uses. That's what happens since that corner store ordinance has come in place. So.
Okay.
Does that kind of, I mean, I think you understand.
I know what you're saying, and I know what he's saying, and I know what he's saying.
No,
they're
but
not all
those are
quite
two,
the same.
I don't know. I think those are pretty. We want two.
They're very close.
We want two different ordinances. I'm just saying. I think that I try to make it as clear as possible.
No, I understand what you're saying. Yeah,
If you could make different ordinances for each of us.
Yes.
Multiple versions for each of us.
And then when you meet again and Eric's here, we'll do
Right, and we'll need his
Yeah,
input as well.
he'd get a fourth one.
Yes. Exactly.
All right, so here's what we'll do. I'll type up I'll send to you, make sure that we're clear on what we did tonight. Then from there, we'll send it to Keith. Keith will send back two rough, kind of the things, and we can have another meeting just to make sure that we've got everything in both of those that we're looking at doing, and then take it to council.
So, quick question on this, Mr. Moore, just from a open records comment or open meeting kind of thing. Can we give feedback to Mr. Gabbard on like a minutes of our meeting thing? Like, we're not, if there's no new content that wasn't discussed, or can he send it out to us and say, if you have objections, reach out to me, but we're not gonna, how can we?
Let's treat it like council minutes, where council minutes at the clerk, and I don't know what the clerk does now. Clerk used to send out the minutes to everybody, would email them out, and then if an individual council member had an issue, like, oh, you got that person's name wrong, or I never said that, they would go back to the clerk, or to, at this point, to Mike, and then
Yeah, that's good. Okay.
it'd be a
So
question of
basically
like,
just
and
stick
if
to it.
there's something
that's a
there,
good
then you
point.
can like, well, I'll reflect it, then this was said, but 3 people should not be cross-communicating.
No,
from
I
this
agree.
committee.
So,
Yeah.
I would just say, Mr. Gabbard, just in your email to us, just say don't ask for comments.
So then you would
I would-
reply directly to me, not reply all.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Anything else? Anybody else? All right. All right. We'll call this meeting of economic development adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Everybody for coming.